Hi. So I want to discuss about Creation Engine 2. This is the Bethesda's game engine that powers Starfield, and I want to say that I've seen a lot of criticism of it, and I, as a software engineer, I'm curious about the criticism of it. I listened quite many hours of Starfield reviews because I personally like Bethesda games how they are described from outside. I kind of never played. I played only Daggerfall and Daggerfall Unity, and kind of that's it. Shame on me. But I've seen people playing, especially Skyrim. I never seen anyone playing Oblivion, excluding on YouTube, and Morrowind and Skyrim. And I've seen one person playing Fallout 4. So I have very little hands-on experience. But I can say some things out of the box which I think are correct on the technical side. But the part which I want to say first is that if you think that there is only bad speaking about uh, Creation Engine 2, this is a false statement. You can see definitely good clips, and this is one.
Hello, everyone.
And this person kind of is very happy with the Creation Engine. And let me say that this is the exception. Most of the clips are quite negative, and I will watch, and we will watch around 1 minute about this YouTube reviewer. But this is just for illustration. There are more.
The approach they should have been taking is okay, we need to go through our entire engine on a very regular basis and make sure that we are updating core components of it so that it remains efficient, performative, and capable of doing what we are setting out to do. And because they have not been taking the appropriate approach with this, they're at the point where not only are these various issues still plaguing the engine itself is not capable of doing what they really want it to do. It is no longer an engine that stands up with the best of them. It is actively holding Bethesda back at this point, and they desperately need to either replace it entirely, or if they're going to stick with the engine, which we know they're going to, they need to go through the entire code base with a fine-tooth comb and not only fix the problems that they should have fixed years ago, but simply go through the entire thing and make sure that they are updating the entire code base to be as efficient and performative as possible, so that when they do try to introduce new graphical features, new physics features, and so on and so forth, they can do so without it causing severe performance problems, without it causing severe glitches, and so that people can actually look at this new feature and say, hey, that's actually really cool, good on you for adding that, Bethesda, as opposed to, oh look, it's another Bethesda game that barely functions. And now that I've talked your ear off.
Yeah, so let's say that I'm not too keen about this take. But let's talk about the premise that should they rewrite or replace the engine? And it depends in many ways in life, but I would say that it's a no. Like one part which I want to say is that reusing of the engines is really for forever. So if you hear about Doom, first Doom games, there were many Doom games which they were using the same engine. I want to show to you some type of engines that they were used, like in strategy games. This is Heroes of Might and Magic. It was very popular at end of 1990s and maybe start of 2000s. So this game, for example, even it doesn't look the same, they excluding my scaling, they are really the same engine. You could even go into the assets, they would use the same algorithm, but they tune it a bit. Let's say they made a version 1.2 or 1.5, and they made this game. And this Heroes 3 made many people to love and play even today. It is still a very popular game, 25 years old, and they use the same engine of Heroes 1, and any other rewrite, refactor, they never reach the same popularity. So there is no Fallout like to Fallout 3 revival. I'm not saying there were no selling of the newer Heroes 5 like, but people they tried to rewrite it after Heroes 3, and every attempt failed really in popularity. Let's go forward. The other part is that even if you have the same engine, even if you look into a shooter, the game can feel very different. So you can play Half-Life, like it's on the right. They use the same engine, like from the left, which is named Quake World, and the Valve tune it, improve it, polished, but it is the same with bad shadows, things like that. But it was doing its job, and I think no one would complain saying, "Hey, you should not use." And just improving on the same engine, it reached this kind of level of graphics. And the bottom one is Titanfall 2, and they are, just to be very clear, updating to source, and it's basically countered the first, let's say, engine, let's say Counter-Strike, but they had Havoc physics, or they made it to be like a strategy game, the Dota 2. This is again an older version, but so you can do all this impressive UI and shooting and so on with the same engine, and you don't need to rewrite it. Obviously, we will evaluate how it's the engine itself, but sometimes you may see, and there are advantages to go to the engine. So the left is Quake 1, the right is Quake 3, and the bump in technology was immense. So the right side could have rounded surfaces. They could have scripting, which was accelerated using a just-in-time compiler. So it had volumetric light, volumetric shadows, better lighting baked in, and so on, and not put in software. So it had many things, and I'm sure some people will say that they prefer Quake 1, but you can see also the bumps. But also I've showed to you like it could look if you put a lot of effort into the Quake 1 to reach like Titanfall 2 levels of graphics. But on the other hand, especially it was very important to create the left image. This is the Call of Duty and Call of Duty 2, which they were depending a lot of the scripting. So the scripting was much faster in Quake 3 kind of engines. So you can add many enemies, and you could not add easily with a huge performance impact in Quake 1. And if you take this as a consequence, again, you can iterate and you can improve. And what I wanted to show, this is in Advanced Warfare. It looked kind of the same with Fall 2. Maybe a bit better, maybe a bit worse. So they converged to the same graphics, and or almost the same graphics. So you can improve on the same engine. So this is not, I think, an issue. So I will want to check the Gamebryo engine, or how you want to name it, creation engine. And if you look top left, this is how characters, for example, would look. And if you look to the bottom, I can't say they are the same mold, but they look kind of in the same mold. They have higher texture, but they look still ridiculous faces and so on. But if you look to compare the Skyrim, which is top left, and the bottom right, I picked few pictures which I found online, and I understand some are meme worthy. But if you look at Skyrim face versus Starfield face, on the animations and faces, they look really, again, night and day. And this is the same engine, and it looks to me is the same bump. It's a realistic 2.0 bump from what was before. And we are not talking only about how good the textures look, but how many things like the hair, how it's illuminated, and so on. And to me, is that this is the Video Gamers interview and the review about the engine, and it says it has global illumination, volumetric lighting, better animations, and physics. For Havoc, it's a physics engine for character animations, so probably the hair would bounce more realistically and the like. And this is a huge bump. And the other part, what people I think they think of, they say, look, this game is not optimized or something like that. And we can discuss this. So there are talks, so and reviews, and these are all the reviews before the first fixes.
Until we start becoming limited. Let's move on.
So, and here it is the part where you can see some performance. And what I noticed that if you are not GPU bound, the game kind of targets around 100 something frames per second with a high-end GPU with a low levels of graphics. So it looks to me you can really play the game with over 60 frames per second with 3600 R5 AMD. And obviously you can do it better with Intel, but this is maybe luck that it's a bit better optimized for Intel. So to me it is well optimized, and it scales up with the hardware up to 24 threads. Not linearly, but this is normal in most of software. It's very hard to do, especially in a real-time system as a game, to reach that. And of course this is just CPU. What about GPUs? And this is, I think, more interesting. So if you look into the 1080p, but this is high detail, you can see that the frame rate from sorry, let me go to the next one. So this is a screenshot about GPU, and let me be very clear, this is 4K, high detail and no upscaling. So you can see that a 1080 Ti can't reach, it goes more or less on 15 frames per second. But this is fair, because this is the game which I think Bethesda doesn't count. They will run it for 1 year or 2 years and people will forget about it. And in 1 or 2 years, and this not to be an apologetic of Bethesda, this is true even for Skyrim when it was launched and so on. 780 Ti or whatever was popular in the Skyrim times was just making the cut for 70, 80, maybe 100 frames per second, but typically less, and that in 1080. So this game scales enough well to reach similar levels, thinking that there will be a future where the video cards will get better. And yes, this will mean that probably not too many integrated graphics could it run it, like you can run Skyrim, but that's not, I think, the target of Bethesda. This being said, I'm almost thinking that at least some parts were people complaining, and they are not an issue necessarily of Creation Engine, because sometimes I understood there will be soon launched a patch in middle of 2024 that will reduce the numbers of load screens. And this is not an issue that is the engine's fault per se. Like just not put an animation when the person goes into the rocket or goes out of the rocket. That you can split it by half. Skipping the dialogue face popping up like in Oblivion. Again, this is not a Creation Engine per se. You are not forced. This is the patch which fixes. Or a map, or HDR support which is broken, or upscaling support which works only for AMD drivers, or driver issues or whatever. And I heard that even brightness you can properly fix it. And this is quite bad. But these are issues that, even they are an issue, let's say, because it needs an implementation in Creation Engine, these are trivial issues to implement. Maybe it takes a week to implement some of them. Maybe it takes a month. But this means that there are parts in the gaming QA part, but not on the games engine. But there are parts which I honestly don't know the support, because I'm not a developer at Bethesda, that they could help. So one talk which is quite often said is direct storage. This game has many loading screens. So just accelerating the decoding and keeping the data in a format that the GPU can decode it, this would be great. The other part, but this is a two-source solution and it requires a lot of work of an artist to validate it is that quite often you can have things which you can reduce it, let's say, by 4 times. So if you reduce by every dimension the screen resolution of a texture, most likely the texture is 4 times smaller. And it's not only 4 times smaller, but it translates into 4 times smaller load times. So assuming, and I have noticed people having load times of around 5 to 10 seconds, assuming you can reduce the data transfer, this is complemented with direct storage, to let's say a quarter of the data, and because you have 4 times less pixels in general, or 4 times less polygons, and I'm using this 4 times for illustration, you'll have probably 3.5 times less loading time. So if a person complains that it's annoying to wait 10 seconds because of the hardware, probably if you'll wait 2 to 3 seconds, people will not complain so much. But I've seen also on YouTube at least some people having a machine that it will load into 1 to 2 seconds. So probably these people, again, they will have a half of second load times, and many people will not complain. The other part is that probably they have a scheme like that, but I hear it very often when you load, you add a lot of modes. Sometimes the loading increases because it has to instantiate all the scripts to check whatever they do over every object in the world. And I'm not sure if that's true, but probably there could be some solutions to improve the execution time of the scripts or things like that. And what I'm suggesting, again, Bethesda may definitely know it better, is like many people know, if the scripts, let's say, they will go more or less like Lua, there is a Lua JIT. Or if they work with Microsoft, there is a .NET runtime. And maybe they integrate, or they will integrate a .NET runtime to run faster the scripts when they have more complex interactions. But again, these are things that I'm saying hypothetically, but they are, just to say, there are things that can be improved. But on the other hand, if you can think that you can have a lot of fun with games which they didn't change the engine when and they just polished it, you can think the same, that creation engine is fine. And if it's not the fault of the engine, but probably how it's packed into the game which we see it today. Thank you for listening, and see you next time. Bye bye.